Hello, ladies and gentlemen, a new episode of Money Means Business. The lion's share of our episode is going to be totally dedicated to the Egyptian participation in Davos, in the World Forum, World Economic Forum, which included a number of activities, and our top executives were there having a number of meetings, and also on the sidelines of the forum, they had a number of other meetings. They inked memoranda of understanding with a number of states, and all efforts are exerted to boost our economic development and to make sure that our cooperation with other countries is going to take place on the ground for the best interest of all sides. We are going to take a quick look at what was going on in the Swiss resort, and we are going to return back with more.
On behalf of President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi, Dr. Mustafa Madbouli, Prime Minister, headed the Egyptian delegation participating in the World Economic Forum 2025 under the slogan, Cooperation for the Smart Age. The current session of the World Economic Forum discusses a set of major challenges such as addressing geopolitical tensions, enhancing economic growth to contribute to improving living standards, in addition to transforming the energy sector in line with developments in the modern technological era. This year's forum slogan is based on the vision of the forum's founder, Klaus Schwab, that advanced technologies are rapidly reshaping the world, pushing it to a major turning point, which Schwab describes as a social revolution that has the potential to improve people's lives or tear societies apart if not managed wisely. Since the early 1990s, Davos has been famous for hosting the World Economic Forum, an annual gathering held in the winter to bring together international politicians and economists who represent the transitional elite to discuss political and economic issues. The 2025 meeting is being organized in 5 areas: reimagining growth, smart industries, investing in people, protecting the planet, and rebuilding trust. Dr. Mustafa Madbouli, Prime Minister, met on the first day with Mr. Henrik Braun, Executive Vice President and Chief Operating Officer of Coca-Cola, in the presence of Engineer Hassan Al-Khatib, Minister of Investment and Foreign Trade, and Ambassador Mohammed Nigb, Egypt's ambassador to Switzerland. At the beginning of the meeting, the Prime Minister stressed Egypt's keenness to support the existing partnership between the Egyptian government and Coca-Cola, as well as support the company's investments in the Egyptian market, noting at the same time the government's readiness to provide various possible incentives that would enhance Coca-Cola's investments in Egypt and provide various means of support to Coca-Cola. Dr. Mustafa Madbouli also met with the CEO of the Belgian company DEEM. The Prime Minister began the meeting by expressing his appreciation for the activity of the Belgian company DEEM in Egypt, praising the size of the company's projects, especially in the Suez Canal economic zone. Dr. Mustafa Madbouli also met with the CEO of the Spanish company Acciona Energia. At the beginning of the meeting, Madbouli stressed Egypt's aspiration to cooperate with the company as the largest green energy producer with 15 gigawatts, as well as its spread and presence in 52 countries around the world, praising the company's capabilities in the field of seawater desalination, renewing his aspiration to cooperate with the company in this field in light of Egypt's water needs. Dr. Mustafa Madbouli, Executive Vice President of Volvo Trucks Operations, met with Engineer Hassan Al-Khatib, Minister of Investment and Foreign Trade. At the beginning of the meeting, Dr. Mustafa Madbouli praised the great strides made by Volvo Group in manufacturing electric trucks and cars and the success it has achieved in this field, pointing out the Egyptian government's aspiration to cooperate with the group in light of Egypt's orientation aimed at expanding the use of electric transportation means of cars and trucks to serve environmental goals. During the Prime Minister's visit to Switzerland, Dr. Mustafa Madbouli witnessed the signing of the Joint Economic Committee Agreement between the Arab Republic of Egypt and the Swiss Confederation. The signing of the agreement comes within the framework of strengthening bilateral relations between Egypt and Switzerland in the fields of trade, investment and economic development, and is a serious step towards strengthening economic ties between the two countries in line with their common aspirations to achieve sustainable development in various sectors. Al-Mashat explained that the total current bilateral cooperation portfolio between the two countries amounts to $71.6 million in grants to finance 9 projects, noting that the Swiss side does not limit its funding to projects implemented by the Egyptian government only, but rather includes funding public sector projects as well as non-governmental organizations and the private sector. It is worth noting that these meetings held by the Prime Minister and his accompanying delegation aim to review investment opportunities and components in Egypt and the possibilities of attracting more investments to the Egyptian market, as well as the measures and procedures currently adopted by the Egyptian government related to financial, monetary and trade policies aimed at facilitating investors and facilitating the export and import system with the aim of increasing foreign trade rates.
Welcome back. Let's start immediately as we do have a lot to speak about. But before we start, let me welcome my dear guest live here in the studio, Dr. Ahmed ELLEISSY Money, our international expert in management and a writer. Thank you very much for being with us, sir.
You're most welcome.
Sir, let's start. As I said, we do have a lot to speak about regarding the Egyptian participation in Davos, and we are going to start with the Prime Minister, Dr. Mustafa Madbouli, who was there leading a high-ranking delegation as he was representing President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi. The forum in general is one of the most important economic gatherings, I think. And before going through the issue, as far as I know and as far as I read just before the gathering, that there were huge demonstrations, thousands of demonstrations against what's going on inside the economic forum, meaning that people, after some surveys which were led, are all the time saying or thinking that it's only for the elite. Many things are being done for the elite, not for the layman in the street, and this has nothing to do with developing or developed countries. I mean, this is something which is really prevailing in the whole world. Before going into the details of Davos meeting, how do you see these demonstrations, and if the international community should look at what the mass are saying or their demands, I mean?
We just need to understand or take a step back to understand what is this Davos thing, what is it about?
Sure.
It is actually a forum that is not a very formal one. Mm-hmm. It is meant for the governments or the politicians of the world to meet the business community and economic community of the world. It is not part of any international organizations, not part of the UN, the EU, and what have you. Mm-hmm. So it's almost as close as can be to an informal meeting to exchange opinions, to exchange ideas, and to exchange opinions and views for the year to come. This year, the focus were on 2 points. Mm-hmm. The first point is the artificial intelligence, mm-hmm, and what it is doing to the world in all aspects and from all dimensions. And the second one was for clean energy. Mm-hmm. These were the 2 focuses that this year's gathering had. Of course, the news, the geopolitical situation all across the world imposes itself on what's going on and the discussions in the forum. And from here, if we put it in the right context and in that frame, we understand the logic of the very high activities that His Excellency the Prime Minister performed and the meetings that he has conducted with different parties, be it on that aspect, the political one or the economic one.
And simply, as you mentioned, the two important themes of this edition of the conference, AI, or artificial intelligence, and the clean energy, meaning that this was also an opportunity to ink some memoranda of understanding among businessmen or even among countries in those two domains in specific. And was this the agenda of Prime Minister Dr. Mustafa Madbouli before going there?
Sure. If we look at some of the activities that the Prime Minister conducted, what is very interesting, if we start with the political dimension first, he had a very interesting meeting with the Prime Minister of Qatar and his foreign ministry, his foreign affairs minister. So this is a very interesting time to have such a meeting, especially in such forum, between the Egyptian Prime Minister and Qatar, number 2 and 3 basically in the country, as we are in a discussion, and this has been announced previously in several occasions, for major investments by the Qatari state into Egypt. So we can understand the context of such a meeting. His Excellency also met with the Croatian Prime Minister. During this meeting, they discussed the rural line and the capability of having a similar rural line as the one that Egypt has started with Italy. Many people don't know what a rural, it sounds a little bit funny as a name, what a rural line is. Rural is an abbreviation for roll on, roll off. So basically these huge trucks, what they do is they roll on, not the head of the truck, they get dismantled. So basically you have what we call the 16-wheelers. So basically they dismantle the head of the truck from the body, and they put the body on a ship. The ship goes to its destination, and on the other side it gets met by another head, and it gets transformed to its destination, specific destination in the receiving country. This technique is one very efficient in its cost, and it is extremely fast, so it's most used for fresh goods. Typically the exports of vegetables and fruits
and stuff like that.
So this is one of the most efficient techniques to export fresh goods. Also it does fish and maybe meats and poultry sometimes.
Goods,
yeah. So, but
on
generally,
the top of the, as a top priority, I mean.
yes.
But yes, sir.
The discussion between our Prime Minister and the Croatian Prime Minister went towards the direction of the possibility of opening such a line. And needless to add, of course, once we open such a line, that will mean that Croatia will have more exports, fresh exports from Egypt, which will be another dimension to increase the Egyptian exports in general.
And also Egypt and Switzerland in Joint Economic Committee at Davos Forum. This was another activity which took place, in addition to meeting the president of the EBRD, or the European Development and Reconstruction Bank, because, you know, sir, sometimes experts are saying that the sideline diplomacy is even more important than participating in the main event. And the MOU signed on the sidelines of any big event can be even more useful to all parties. This is an opportunity where people can meet and can boost their cooperation in all domains. If you want to elaborate on that.
Sure, because this is the beauty of such forum, that there are very little or very few strings attached to it. Almost a casual meeting, so people can meet without or outside of the frame or the straight jacket, I would say, of diplomacy, and imposed very clear position. It's casual, in nature. It is non-committing, and it's a very good forum for exchange of opinions and positions with no again strings attached to it. It's not a commitment from whichever side. The discussion of the European Development Bank is also a very important discussion.
Yeah.
We all know the importance and the relationship that Egypt has with the IMF and the World Bank, and the European Bank is almost the smaller or the younger brother of the World Bank. So it's of a major importance that Egypt plays a role or conducts a very good, has a very good relationship with the European Development Bank, especially with the role that Egypt is trying to play, especially with the potential or the cloud about a possible economic warfare or between the super economic powers, and Europe will be touched by such warfare or price wars and tariff wars if it takes place. So Egypt can play a very, very...
And to echo, sir, what you've just said, let's talk in numbers, if you please. Madbouli explained that since 2012, Egypt has become a country of operations for the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, contributed to increasing the volume of investments for the public and private sectors to more than 13 billion euros in 194 projects, with more than 80% of these investments directed to the private sector. In 2024, Egypt became the largest country of operations for the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development. Before talking more about these statistics, are you satisfied with the numbers?
No.
Okay.
As simple as no.
Yeah.
It is very normal that Egypt, being the largest economy in the southern Mediterranean, has the largest contribution from the European Bank. I think the Europeans need to step a little bit more and reinforce their investment in Egypt. We're just next door. The grosso modo, the cost of the Egyptian labor is almost 1/10 of the cost of the labor in Europe. Henceforth, we are definitely the better alternative for any manufacturing operation to feed the European continent. We are much closer, much closer than China and Asia. So I think the potential, we're just scratching the surface with these numbers. It could be or should be twice or 3 times that much in terms of the investment and the support of the European Development Bank in Egypt.
Any fields which should be our priority? I mean, we should invade other markets, invade new fields, or there are fields which until the moment, unfortunately, we have not used or exploited enough?
We have one of each.
Okay.
We're one in each camp. The field where we, I think we're doing very well, and clearly the President has put a lot of emphasis on that, is the energy field, whether old or new energy. So we see again in the same context, we see the Prime Minister meeting with the CEO of Eni, which is an Italian company, mostly petroleum and gas, but also has an interest in some other renewable sources of energy. So
Mr. Claudio, I think he became more Egyptian than Italian, but anyways, yeah.
Very much so.
Yeah.
Sorry. So in that context, that is something that it's not that new, but we need to do more of. On the other side, I think we are not where we should be in terms of artificial intelligence. I think it's a function of education, which I think, again, as the President has set in several occasions that this is the direction and this is the most important dimension that we want our young people and our youth to accelerate in. We have a very strong human capital in Egypt. We're very rich in numbers and in quality. Education is still to catch up with the potential of the young Egyptian population, and we have a huge potential that we really need to start to utilize in that direction. We're not where we should be as yet.
You know, last week, I think it was last Saturday, when Prime Minister Dr. Mustafa Madbouli visited Creativa in Giza. And Creativa, I think it acts as a hub for what you've just talked about, sir, and to be the incubator for many projects, giving the new entrepreneurs and startups the know-how, and to have to be a brainstorming panel where I can go and just discuss my idea, and when I think out of the box and know that I am going to be supported by the state, I think that this is the very right steps in the right path, if you agree with me.
I definitely do agree, but I think the magnitude has to be intensified. I think we still, I mean, we should be the new India. India is dominating the IT and the technology and the software industry in the world. How did they do that? They did that with good education and a very large pool of young people, which were not any different. So we should be able to play a similar role, if not a better role, in the global context, given the importance. We read some of the statistics, and some of them, to be honest with you, almost scary. When you read that 60% of the jobs that we know today will not be there in 2030. That's 5 years.
But how many jobs are going to be created?
Yes, but the jobs, probably many more, but the jobs that will be created will require a new set of skills. Unless we do have that set of skills, we will not be able to cope up. Again, there is about 30% of the jobs that will be available in 2030. We don't know anything about. 2030 is just around the corner. That's in 5 years. That's nothing. So are we ready for that? Are we ready for the change? That's a big question mark in my mind. And the clock is ticking, and it's not going to wait for us or for anybody else for that matters. So that focus, as the President has highlighted several times, really we need to push it to the absolute maximum to be able to cope up with the new normal that is going to be around 5 years. I remember I was at school when personal computers came out, and we were looking at this, you know, what is this new beast, you know? And when people used to say, or even for mobile phones, when people used to say, everybody...
Sir, an ATM machine is not going to take the place of an accountant in the bank. He is going to have his job, and the ATM is going to have its job. If I'm going to have a comparison similar to that, a new job is going to be created, and other is going to be eliminated.
It is not that simple, but actually the ATM role in 5 years will be different from what it is today, and such is the role of the teller or the person that's working in a bank. It will also be different. It will be actually enriched, so it will be a much more important job, and it will be doing, for example, one of the things that they are talking about, and that's a very interesting research which was done by, I'm not going to say the name, but one of the major information technology companies, one of the very famous names, that the job of data entry will disappear.
Sure.
Because now with the artificial intelligence, with the techniques that are available, whether visual or between visual, oral, and text, and the integration that are today possible and in a few years time will be possible. There will not be any need for something called data entry. And there are several jobs like such translators. There will not be a need for a translator, as we know, as we see them in international meetings between two presidents. Each one of them will bring his own translator. All of these jobs will be automated. What will be very tricky would be the people who operate the artificial intelligence. And this is what is going to make a huge difference. Even, and they're touching almost all aspects of our lives. Even the artistic aspect, the creation of movies, the creation of TV series, everything is being touched by the changes that are happening in the artificial intelligence. We need to cope up. We need to understand that this is going at full speed, and we need to put our gear down and really go full speed ahead, because the world is not going to wait for us.
Amen to that, and I think most of the items you have kindly told us about, I think they were already discussed in this Davos forum. And since also you mentioned a very important issue, which is clean energy and of course climate change, and how to preserve our environment. As you're saying that, sir, today there was a very important meeting between Minister of Petroleum, Engineer Badawi, and his Cypriot counterpart, and they also talked about the Egyptian, Cypriot, and Greek cooperation in this field, and they also spoke about this connection and the tripartite meeting, which the summit which took place earlier, and we also agreed upon the steps taken on the ground to boost this cooperation in this domain in specific. How do you see this tripartite cooperation as a model of cooperation between Egypt and European countries, of course symbolized here in Greece and Cyprus?
This is a very pragmatic solution to the current, and it actually emerged from the current geopolitical situation between Russia and Europe mostly. We all know that Ukraine is almost I don't want to say the first line of defense, but it is being backed up by the European community, and they're putting themselves in the role as they're defending the whole continent against the Russians. The appetite of the major economies in Europe to consume energy, and specifically gas, from Russia is diminishing very fast. So they need an alternative.
Yeah.
Egypt and Cyprus and Greece together, they could form between generation of electricity is number two, but natural gas first. But the trick here, or the challenge, would be how would you get it to Europe? So there is a project, if I'm not mistaken, to work on a piping system that goes through the Mediterranean to be an alternative to Russian gas.
Yep.
And that's a huge challenge, and unless we're all the three countries do have some sort of a benefit, they would not be willing to cooperate.
By all means.
So that's a very positive opportunity created by the current situation in Europe, and I think that over time the situation, even if this war gets stopped one way or the other, does not mean that the continent will be willing to do business and cooperate with Russia in the near future. So that's a very good alternative and a huge opportunity for the Egyptian economy, I think.
Returning back to Davos, sir, if you permit me, and we are going to go to the activities of Her Excellency Minister of International Cooperation, Dr. Rania Al-Mashat, as she, of course, was part of the meetings of Prime Minister Dr. Mustafa Madbouli on the sidelines of the forum, and also she met with the Director General of the World Trade Organization in light of the international developments in global trade and impact from local and regional tensions, because I cannot separate politics from economy. I cannot separate economy from what's going on in the region, and there are unfortunately negative impacts not only on us but I think on the whole world.
Very true. I mean, the changes that are happening in the U.S. and the new administration coming in with a very aggressive tone, and their approach is very different, I would say, to international trade, would have an impact almost on the entire planet. Planet, absolutely, yes. Because, I mean, between China and the US, I think, if I'm not mistaken, we're close to over 40% of global trade. So if something disturbs the 40%, everything is going to follow. So I would say, I would expect every single one of the 8 billion people living on the planet would be affected in some way, sort of form. So what's going on is major and of major importance, and could have consequences that are dire for many countries. Each challenge or each problem has an opportunity. If we position ourselves in the right place and we play our cards in the right order, I think we can come out of it winning. Egypt is one of the few countries, and I think this also has to do with a lot of the smart way we're running our international relationship. We're one of the very few countries in the world that managed to have very good relationship with China, balanced relationship with China, the US and Russia at the same time. Very few countries in the world actually could claim to have the same. So obviously we are playing a good game, if you want.
But this is very tricky.
It is very tricky.
I mean, it's something which needs all the time to be that cautious in every single term, every single word, and in every single MOU signed.
And even more than that. True, but it's much more than that. I mean,
if you want to elaborate, please do.
Sure. I mean, sometimes you have to say to a friend no, and that's not easy. But to be able to say no to a friend, yet is to keep a very good relationship with that friend, this is a huge challenge, and you have to say no, because if you ever say yes, this will cause you, or automatically will put you in a confrontational or adversary situation with the other side. So to be able to know exactly when to say yes and when to say no,
and how to say no.
Of course.
Business is business. Cannot cope or cannot go with our diplomacy, or should go together hand in hand to make sure that we are going to keep these balanced foreign relations with everyone. I mean, with all camps, East and West, small or big power. You know, this is, as I said, very tricky. But sir,
it is very tricky.
Is this the thing which we are doing right now, and based on steps we have taken already in the past 10 years?
I think so far it seems like we're walking the very fine balance. We're literally walking a razor edge to maintain good business relationships with the 3 big players in the world. Yet we also have a very good political relationship with the 3, and this is really not an easy game to balance. It's like really dancing on a high wire. So so far, knock on wood, we're doing well, especially that we are touched by some of the actions that are being done or are taking place totally outside our scope. And specifically, for example, Suez Canal is very, it's one of 4 or 5 main sources of foreign currency for Egypt, which is very much important for the Egyptian economy.
Sure.
And we've lost, if I'm not mistaken, about 60 or 70% of the income of Suez Canal in the past few months. And again,
$7 billion in few months.
That's big for an economy in the size of the Egyptian economy.
Yeah.
That's a lot of money. And especially also the other side of it, it is not an on-off case. So it is not that tomorrow morning they will shut down, the war will stop, or the Houthis will decide to let ships come, and then the next day we're going to go back to the pre-war levels, which was around 800 to 1 billion billing per month. It will take some time to go back to that previous level, and meanwhile the Egyptian economy is paying the bill for no action that we committed. So we've been again balancing a very difficult act and trying to walk almost literally in a minefield.
And since you mentioned our relations, sir, our relations also with the international economic entities. Here we talked about a meeting between Al-Mashat and the WTO General Secretary, or General Director, I'm sorry. And separately, the minister also met with the General Secretary of the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development, UNCTAD, or I hope I'm pronouncing this right. But anyways, to take into consideration that it's also a must to have these meetings between our ministers and our top economic executives with the secretaries or secretary generals or the CEOs of such entities and international companies on the sidelines of the forum. This is to make sure that if there are an MOU, it's going to be inked and it's going to be implemented on the ground. It's not only ink on paper, I mean.
At the end of the day, the role of the mission that was attending Davos to represent Egypt is really to market Egypt. So these sort of meetings is basically to understand the needs of these mega companies and see or show them how can Egypt deliver on your needs. I think this is the name of the game, is basically to attract them to come and set up business in Egypt and use Egypt as their hub to supply Europe, supply the MENA region, which is Middle East and North Africa,
to all Africa,
and then the Sub-Saharan Africa as well. So we're a pivotal country, and we need to explain what we can make available for such companies to come and set up business in Egypt. So at the end of the day, we're marketing the company, we're communicating that we're open for business and we welcome foreign investments, and we can help supply what that foreign investment needs, whether from superstructure, infrastructure, or personnel.
all facilities and workforce, you name it. I have 1 minute, sir. Prime Minister Dr. Mustafa Madbouli and the Minister of International Cooperation, Dr. Rani Al-Mashat, spoke a lot about the lion's share of the private sector in our economy. Are you satisfied with the percentage? And if not, tell me about the percentage which should take place on the ground regarding the private sector participation in our economic development.
To stay on the positive side, I'm satisfied with the evolution of the percentage, that we see a change. We're kind of moving the emphasis from the government running the majority of the economy towards the private sector running the majority of the economy. So that change is already happening. It was announced several times, and maybe not at the fastest possible pace, but it is happening. And are we at the end of the game? Not yet, but I think we are going in the right direction.
And we hope that tomorrow is going to be, inshallah, a better day. Sir, thank you very much for your input. As usual, I enjoyed our discussion.
Thank you very much.
And by this, we come to the end of our episode. We were very much delighted and honored to have with us live here in the studio Dr. Ahmed ELLEISSY Money, our international expert of management and a writer. And now I'm going to leave you the most important economic events which took place in the past 7 days. Till we meet again same time on Nile TV International. Many thanks for watching. This was Nirmeen Abdurrahman.
The Central Bank of Egypt announced an increase in tourism revenues by 8.2% during the first quarter of the current fiscal year to about $4.8 billion, compared to about $4.5 billion in the same period of the last fiscal year. The central bank explained that the number of tourist nights increased to a record about 51.6 million nights compared to 47.7 million nights during the same period of the previous year. Lieutenant General Osama Rabia, chairman of the Suez Canal Authority, discussed with the Secretary General of the International Maritime Organization, the IMO, the necessary procedures to start the return of major shipping lines to transit through the Suez Canal, with the start of the stability of the security situation in the Red Sea region in conjunction with the implementation of the Armistice Agreement, indicating at the same time the readiness of the Suez Canal to operate at full capacity for the gradual return of global trade movement to its normal course through the Suez Canal. French Infrastructure Fund, Meridiam, announced that it will invest more than 1 billion euros in a wind energy project in Egypt, noting that a power station will be established in 2 locations starting in January 2025 on the Gulf of Suez, with a total capacity of 1,100 megawatts. The station is expected to start operating in 2027 and will continue to be used for 25 years. The project is considered the largest in Africa. The Minister of Planning says that the volume of development funding that Egypt received last year amounted to about $9.5 billion, of which $4.2 billion went to the private sector. She expected to obtain a new package of funding from development institutions during the current year, much of which will be directed to the private sector, helping it implement its projects at a lower financing cost and longer repayment periods. According to a statement issued by the Prime Minister's office, the Deputy CEO of the largest Swedish car manufacturing company announced that the company is ready to cooperate with Egypt in the field of manufacturing electric cars and trucks. Dr. Mustafa Madbouli explained during the meeting he held with the Deputy CEO of the group during his participation in the activities of the World Economic Forum, Davos 2025, that the government is ready to cooperate with the group in light of Egypt's orientation towards expanding the use of electric transportation means of cars and trucks to serve environmental goals. Remittances of Egyptians working abroad jumped by 84.7% to $8.4 billion in the first quarter of the current fiscal year 2024-2025. It is worth noting that in the first 9 months of last year, remittances increased by 42.6% to about $20.8 billion, compared to about $14.6 billion in the period from January to September 2023. The Minister of Agriculture and Land Reclamation said that the measures taken by the state in order to increase the competitiveness of Egyptian agricultural exports contributed to achieving an unprecedented boom in this field, pointing to the increase in the volume of Egyptian agricultural exports, as an unprecedented boom was achieved in the volume of fresh agricultural exports during the year 2024 to reach about 7.4 million tons, an increase of about 1 million tons over the year 2023, with a total value of $3.7 billion, a figure that has never been achieved in the history of Egyptian agricultural exports. Engineer Hassan Al-Khatib, Minister of Investment and Foreign Trade, discussed with Omar Mahanna, Chairman of the Board of Directors of an Egyptian bank, and a Chinese delegation, investment opportunities in Egypt in the field of tire manufacturing and export, pointing out the importance of localizing the tire industry in a way that contributes to reducing costs and improving efficiency, noting that localizing production in Egypt benefits investors by reducing logistics and operating costs, in addition to its contribution to developing the industrial base in Egypt.